Good morning, everyone. Today is the 15th day of Shevat. Tu B'Shvat, Chamisha Asa B'Shvat. This the new year for trees, and we're going to learn Tanya. We're in the middle of chapter 24. Actually, what we're going to do is when we finish, we're going to go back. We're going to do a second recording, and we're going to do chapter 24 from the beginning as well, since we missed yesterday. But we're going to continue on page 73 in your Chayenu. Ruvain, please bring your stuff and come up. Thank you very much. Ruvain Herrera. Okay, so now we're talking about yesterday. We're gonna go back soon. We're gonna say how a yid does not do an avera unless a ruach shtus, a spirit of folly, stupidity enters his mind. Now, in today's lesson, he says one can overcome this behavior when seen as opposition to one's divine connection. If you realize that what you do will cause even a tiny crack in your relationship with Hashem, you're not going to want to do it. When sinning, one is even lower than an animal, which Dr. is going to start with here. An animal does not violate its creator's will. It's just acting like an animal. That's what it does. But if you step outside of what you're supposed to do, then you're even lower than that because you're not doing your job. An animal, being an animal, is doing his job. This explains the commentary of our sages on the pasuk. If a man's wife turns aside and commits adultery, so he says, no man commits any transgression unless a spirit of folly has entered into him. And our sages relate the word of siste, turning aside, to shtus, folly, stupidity. Tafilu isha amnefes. Shedai tekala haisavisheles beruach tavasa lule ruach shtus shaba. So even an adulterous woman, with her frivolous nature, could have controlled her passionate drive were it not from the spirit of folly within her. By the way, this doesn't excuse anyone. It just goes to show that the Yetzer Hara and the Nefesh HaBahamis are hard at work. You have to stop that. You have to get in the way. You have to make sure not to fall into this spirit of folly. Realize and recognize where it comes from. But what happens? When this spirit of folly enters a person, it hides the love of Hashem within you. And a person intrinsically wants to, it wants to cleave to Hashem in unity and oneness. A person does not want to be separated from Hashem for even a moment. Even if they might have to give up their lives instead of, God forbid, doing anything against Hashem, idol worship or adultery, anything like that. Even if a person says, just bow down to this idol, I don't care what you believe, but in front of the people, they'll think you're bowing down to the idol with belief in this idol. No, a person will be willing to give up his life. Now, even if her hidden love of Hashem has the power to enable her to face death rather than be separated from Hashem, surely then it's within her power to overcome these temptations and lusts for adultery, which is a lighter suffering than death. It's only because the spirit of folly is going to say, nah, this is not going to separate you from Hashem. Go ahead, do it, watch, nothing's going to happen. That's what happens. A hefresh she'etzloi bein isur niuf le'isur ishtachava lavidazara hu gamkein ruach shtus the klipa. The distinction she makes between the prohibition against idolatry and not against adultery is also a spirit of folly stemming from the klipa. It renders her insensitive to the enormous breach between herself and Hashem that's created by every sin. If a person would be aware of this breach, of this separation, they would overcome their desire and refrain from sin. But obviously we don't see it. Hashem is hidden, and we don't see how this affects our relation with Hashem. By the way, these are all, fancy sounding words. We're talking about practical, everyday decisions that come our way that we say, it's okay, no big deal. And we do them anyways, even though we know they're wrong. This is because stupidity enters our mind that says, it's not really going to affect anything between me and Hashem. I can still be a good Jew. I could daven, I could go to minyan, I could learn, I could have my appearance as if I'm doing everything right. But behind closed doors, or in his mind, or in her heart, David doesn't really care about this. He's probably not, it's not such a big deal. It's a big challenge that we have. That's what we have to overcome. Even a small little minor transgression. What's the big deal? Nobody's going to see me do it. Even one who commits a tiny little sin, it's terrible. And he's completely sundered from Hashem's unity and oneness. It's a very, very big deal. We can't just take it lightly that, it's a tiny little thing. You remember, a flick of a light switch on Shabbos, like who really cares? I'd rather be able to see when, the light's off. Whatever, that's like mamish a Shabbos thing. But there's plenty of things we talked about lusts before. We know. Everybody knows what their challenges are. And even more, a person is sundered from Hashem's unity and oneness even more than the Sitrach and Klippa, which are called strange gods. You would never violate idolatry. But when it comes to this little thing, you're like, So he says this could be even worse than Avodah Zarah. So what a person becomes is even. Oh, I'm sorry. When we're talking about Klippa and Sitra Achara, all of the world, all things of the world that are not dedicated to Hashem come from the Sitra Achara and Klippa. Unclean animals, beasts, birds, and vermin, reptiles, creepy crawlies. So the person who transgresses a minor sin is even worse than lower than the klipa that derives from them. Kemaimer yatush kadamach. When a man sins, he's told that the gnat, the tiniest of bugs, preceded you, which means don't be so excited because even this lowly bug was created before you. And the Alter Rebbe explains, Perush, the af yatush shemachnis ve'enei moitzi. This means that even the gnat, which the Talmud states, consumes food but does not excrete, indicating a klipa, which is the height of selfishness. It does not give anything over. All it does is consume, take, but it doesn't release. It doesn't give. Sheklipa yoser tachtoino. Rechoika mibechinas hakdusha hamishpas v'tachas harichuk. It's from the very lowest of the klipa, removed from all holiness. Muramai kedusha mashpas v'tachas harichuk kedemes leish achoite v'shlalshalos v'yiridas achayus mirotzen alim baruch hu. Imagine, so this little gnat, that's the way it's created. It's not going into the world saying, I'm going to be selfish. That's the way God created this tiny little bug. But you that have brains, and you that know better, and you that has the willpower because you've done it in other times and in other areas, you can't seem to get over this little thing. You have to eat this right now. You have to do this right now. You have to think that right now during Shemona Esrei. You can't focus on the words. So then how are you better than this tiny little bug? That's the way it was created. Even and we're talking about all the unclean different beasts and everything. All these animals, they don't deviate from what their natural instinct is. They're created as animals, and that's what they do. That's what they do. They act like a behemoth. If you act like a behemoth, okay, so sometimes we do. But when we do, at least we should be the Rebbe's behemoth. Okay, meaning the life force animating them, which is aware of the divine will, does not permit them to act in violation. So what they do is, whatever they do, They're acting like an animal. That's all they know. So what does the pasuk say? It's on Hedron 38b. No, I'm sorry. In Bereshis. The fear and dread of you shall lie upon every beast of the earth. Yeah, technically, the behemoths should be scared of us because we're godly. We're connected. We're above them, unless we act like a behemoth. So first, the fear and dread of every beast of the earth will be the fear and dread of you shall lie upon every beast of the earth. And then it says in Sanhedrin that a wild beast will never defy a human being unless he appears to be like an animal. So if he's acting godly and he's connecting with the Eibishter, then he's going to be scared of the person. But if the person is acting like a behemoth, then the animal's not scared of him anymore. Mistalik me'al pneihem kol chayis rois iskafion kamaihu. Meshikosav Zayar Gab Daniel begoiv aroyos. So what happened when confronting tzaddikim from whose face the divine image with Tzelem Elikim never departs? The evil beasts are humbled before them. As it stated in Zayar concerning Daniel and the lions, that not only did the lions not harm him, but on the contrary, they humbled themselves before him. They laid down next to him. At any rate, what emerges from above is that even the animals do not violate God's will. V'im kein, ha'choyit v'ayver etzonis barach afilu ba'avera kala b'shas ma'aseh u'betachlis hadichok mikdusha el yoyna shehi yichudei v'achdusu yisbarach. It's clear that one who sins and transgresses against Hashem, even in a minor thing, is at the time he commits it completely removed from Hashem's divine holiness, meaning Hashem's unity and oneness. Person that sins is even lower than all the unclean creatures. Here it says vermin. My teacher used to say the creepy crawlies and the reptiles which derive from the sustenance from the Sitra and Klipa of Avodah Zarah. This is heavy stuff. So the all aforementioned demonstrates how one's hidden love for Hashem can enable him to overcome his desire to transgress any sin. But it's very hard because, as we mentioned numerous times, that Hashem's hidden. So if Hashem's hidden, then you feel like it's easy to forget. And the Ruach Shtus takes a good, overpowers you. But the more we learn this inyan, and the more we realize that we have the power to overcome the Sitra Achra, we have the power to overcome the Yetzer Hara. And he tries to tell you, it's no big deal. And if he does, then he's lower than an animal. He's lower than the tiniest bug and the nastiest creatures. Yeah, but there's always another day. You get to go to sleep at night and wake up and start the day over again. So the takeaway is any transgression is a detour from Hashem's will and oneness. We have to say to ourselves, I would not be foolish to think that a small Aveda is acceptable. First of all, it's going to separate us from Hashem. Second of all, it's going to put me on a very, very low level. Imagine you see a little spider walking on the floor. You're worse than that. So, we got to rise above. They're doing their job. They're doing exactly what the Eibishter put them on the earth to do, which is to eat, sleep, procreate, and whatever. That's it. Eat, sleep, procreate, basically. They run around. But our Avodah is to serve Hashem. Okay. That's it for now. Isn't it? Second.